Is pitch the same as intonation? They're similar and connected, although not exactly the same thing. Neither are really connected to pronunciation. Pitch and intonation are not really pronunciation. Those are different things. So to improve your pitch and intonation is not to improve your pronunciation. Those are different
Okay.
things. Well, you realize that German is the origin of English. The English comes from the German. English is less influenced by French than it is by German because English is originally a derivative of German. Yes, it does have the Viking and Norse languages. Yes, it does have the Celtic language. Yes, it does have the Latin. Yes, it does have the Angles and the Welsh and the other traditional British languages of the British Isles, um, the Gaelic in there as well. But none of these languages are, if I can create an adjective, intonaceous languages. Scottish is 2 steps away from German, where English is only 1 step away. You could say that German is a lot more repetitively monotonous than English, but English is a pretty flat language in, the global scale of languages, compared to French, compared to Italian, compared to Spanish, and these are, close geographical territories. The English accent is not well known for its inflection in that sense. And your pronunciation is relatively unaffected by your intonation and pitch, provided you're not a completely crazy person, right? Because, obviously, anybody can be crazy and make their voice sound weird. Some people have strange voices naturally as well, but I don't think we fit into that category. Um, so it's very important to understand that uh, that it's a very long and very hard road, and perhaps even perhaps I can be wrong, but perhaps even impossible. That if you want to change your intonation and pitch, which the best way to do that would be to take singing lessons, not to see a specific language tutor, because a singing teacher should be an expert in those areas and understand those best. Um, as a person who worked in music in the past and who had a singing teacher in the past, I can tell you that helped me a lot with positioning the resonation or the resonant tone of my voice, as sometimes there's a resonant tone in your throat, sometimes it's in your chest, sometimes it's in your nose. It moves about a lot, and so having some control over that is pretty important, as well as projecting your voice with and having clarity in your pronunciation, and there's also a personality that fits in there as well, because how we talk is part of how we are. You know, belligerent people use belligerent language, passive people use passive language, jealous people use jealous language, kind people use kind words. Um, there is a little bit of a reflection of ourselves in the language that we use. And now, if your job predominantly over the last 15 years has been in languages, and you've been working in those languages, and working in those languages, covers a whole different aspect of skills, and your language hasn't, your pronunciation hasn't improved, I would say your pronunciation is fixed in general, because there's a lot of things we learn when we're young that stay with us forever, however much we want to change them. So I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm saying that it's highly unlikely, though. It's highly unlikely. And that is not going to change how other people see you. Other people will not see you as a better person in whatever respect, should you have, or should you in some way be able to change your pronunciation, which will not change through pitch and intonation, because that's natural empathy that people have with the language that they're speaking. It's a natural occurrence. How you speak is partly pitch and intonation, and how that sits and rests is part of your character, of who you are. Yeah. Think about a person's voice. Yeah. Think
Mhm.
about the voices of the people that you know. Now, if I tell you about the voices of the people that I know, I can tell you 100% for a fact that no one's voice has ever changed, unless they had an accident, right? And I don't know anybody who's had an accident like that. But take the example of famous actors. Take classic male actors. Samuel L. Jackson would be one, or maybe perhaps Brad Pitt or Bruce Willis, or I'm picking male examples because they're the most obvious, uh, or even Sean Connery. Sean Connery's accent never, ever, ever changed from his first film to his last film. Why did it never change? Because it was part of who he was. Yeah, it's part of who he was, and it's very, even for an actor like him, it was very difficult to change because he came from Edinburgh, and the shit and the James Bond type of character always had this sound when he spoke, and that's through his entire career. Now, if you're a classically professionally trained actor in the Shakespearean vein, of whom there are perhaps only about 100 people on the planet who are that good, then maybe you can do it. If you're the best of the best, maybe you can do it. Um, and there is a slight variation in change from accent to accent, from country to country, but in general, in general, it never changes. Just like it's as fixed as our height. It's as fixed as our fingerprint. It's as fixed as the color of our eyes. There is almost nothing that we can do about it because it's an extension of our personalities. And in order to change those elements, we have to change who we are, because pitch is an expression of how we feel. When we get excited, our voice goes up. When we're sad, our voice goes down. Never changes. Doesn't do anything else. That's it. It's who we are. And I would suggest that uh, unless you're a Shakespearean classically trained actor, um, it's impossible to change, because the most realistic and important thing we can do as a teacher is be ourselves, be who we are. And if people don't respect us for who we are, they'll never respect us for who we are not. So it begins with that, and working on those elements is great if you have found a tutor, or if a person can find a tutor that wants to help them with those things. That's excellent. But a language, perhaps a language therapist, perhaps a lingual specialist, but even even these people don't change the way they speak, because it's who we are. It's our personality. It's an expression of our emotional state, which requires being a constant. Um, Now, has your native language changed in its pronunciation, in its intonation? Has your native language changed? That's a natural, nice, empathetic skill to have, and it's also important to realize that your ability to adapt your ability to adapt your language is not a skill that everybody has. So
Mhm.
some people don't have that at all, but most people who have um, empathetic personalities have an ability to alter their language to fit into the environment of people whom they are surrounded by. It's just a it's just a natural way to communicate. You want to communicate with people in a way that they understand, and so you communicate on their level. You use words and phrases and uh, slight variations on pronunciation uh, that make a difference. Perhaps that's something you could look at for your PhD.